I've been here making Robin so nervous. Had I not been at the Four Seasons having lobster salad,
Yeah.
never end. I mean, hey, it's Maui. What can I tell you?
I can't believe that you came, Polly.
Well, it was down to the wire, and I'm like, so I'm so glad all of you are here. Thank you so much for joining us. You want to do this schedule?
Yeah, so we'll just begin with a brief induction by Polly, and then a 5-minute silent meditation, followed by a Dharma talk with Polly, and then Q&A, and then after an hour, we will have a 45-minute silent meditation for anyone who would like to stay and participate in that.
I wanted her to do that so I would know what we were going to do today. It's always so alive in the moment, right? So if we just close our eyes, we come inward. When we close our eyes, it's as if we dispel or let go of the external reality where our attention has been held. Whenever our eyes are open, our attention tends to go into the external. And so as we close our eyes and take a deep breath and come home, it's like relaxing. I am here now. In the spaciousness of who I am, which is true for each of us, it's exactly the same. The awake awareness that is our open, generative heart, the heart of all creation, and I am that. And we come home to that and know ourselves as one. We all share this as true nature. And then we have the expressions of individuality and the fun of all of the 3D reality. But if this is not home, if this is not primary, then our excursion into the 3D reality can be painful. So as we are acknowledging our true nature here, awake awareness, we are together, we share this space, we know ourselves as this one, and so it is. I don't think I've ever offered this teaching before in this way. In fact, I know I haven't, because there's so many intersections where it gets to be so, and it needs so much explanation in a way. But all of us here have enough of the fundamental, the basic understanding of this approach to waking up, which is to see the difference, the distinction between who I am, my true nature, and what I have, which is this body-mind unit and these circumstances, that I think you all can move along with me. So what I'm going to call it is the story of me. And that story of how a me gets created. And so we go back to the incarnating experience, the incarnating event, what we call birth, right? As I told all of you at some time or another, you've heard me say, I don't think we come in with a clean slate. I think we come into this fear-based 3D reality because there's a resonant frequency that is some frequency of fear. It's greater or lesser to the degree that we're taking on an incarnation in order to clear and open into to a new reality. But at the simple way of talking about it today, just thinking about the incarnation, the infant, the conception, and the birth of a child, a baby. And that baby is totally dependent. We come into a form of the body-mind unit that will then mature and grow up to be the adult body-mind unit. In that initial form, we're totally dependent. And that's what I think of as the setup. Right? It's like all of a sudden we're there. We may have some kind of consciousness about where we came from in terms of what we might call heaven, right? But now it's like the shock of that confinement, that incarnating experience. And there we are, and we are aware. And what awareness is the experience of awareness, of being aware, right? It doesn't, you can't go into any definition. It's the experience of awake awareness. And we have that when we come in, because what came in was an aspect, probably a distorted aspect of our true nature, which is awake awareness. So now we've got that, we're now confined to this little baby body, and we're dependent on those caretakers, looking like mommy and daddy are an auntie or a nurse or somebody who is responsible for feeding us and making us feel safe. And within probably the first 24 hours of having arrived at the very best home, in the very best crib, with the very best little comforter and plush animals, right? We cry and nobody shows up. Kind of like the nun joke. Something happened, it's just like, oh my God. So what occurs in that intersection in our experience is that it creates a distortion field about what's out there and what's needed here, and the discrepancy between those two things. Because we were hungry and there was nobody there, and we went into the fear of survival, the animal fear of survival, the feeling of having been abandoned, the feeling of having been left. That may or may not have been the experience for those of us in this room and on the Zoom, but something like that happens early on, and what it does, it installs what we can think of as an operating system that can be expressed through the language. I'm afraid, I'm at risk here, something's wrong, things are not safe, this is not all right. Whatever version of that, because we don't have language, but the frequency of the experience then installs, and that becomes the what that becomes is the distortion field in which we live. So now, and even as an infant, sometimes people that I work with remember these things. I only remember a happy time sitting in a basket on a kitchen table with my parents making sweet, loving sounds to me. But I think I'd already decided that they weren't dependable. I don't know for sure. Right. I'm not sure they're going to show up when I really need them. I mean, they're there for the fun, right? So what happens with that energetic or that frequential, as R.J. Spino would say, that frequency of doubt, of concern, of fear gets installed. The distortion field now is just simply how we are in the reality that looks like it's out there, right? But we only can see it through what's been experienced. And that is that things are not okay. I may not get what I need. There's a problem here. You know, it's like, Houston, we got a problem. It's like the incoming spaceship has landed and there's not the support that's needed. So from that beginning, and the reason that that occurs, and I'm not trying to make an equation or give some kind of ontological source of this reality, but the reason that the distortion field occurs is because we have an experience that things are not okay. And then from that experience, we conclude that there's something wrong with us. Right? So later on, maybe not that far down the road, we are not getting fed on time, or maybe that we have parents, like I think I was this kind of parent who was reading Dr. Spock. This is in the 60s, right? And believing that infants or children fared better when they were on a schedule and they got fed, and without paying any attention to what they obviously wanted or didn't want. So there's a lot that goes into play with this drama, with this dynamic that's going on. But the bottom line is that for the incarnating being, it means something about her or him. What's true about a person who doesn't get taken care of? They must be not worth it.
Not good enough.
Not good enough. They're not important. And so there's this, even without language, there's the experience of this fear-based conclusion that gets installed. Then in this distortion field, a brother or a sister comes along, and we're either displaced or we are going to have a problem. You know, we may be rejecting them, right? Or we may have been born into a family with siblings, and then we are trying to find our way there. And because of the distortion field of that earliest energetic conclusion, what we see out there is that they are against us, or they don't love us, or they're not on our side. So there is all of this going on. As we get older and we're in school, and now we're having the environment of others our age, and we are having the imposition of expectation of making good grades, of learning the alphabet, of learning to spell, and all that creates for a little one who's caught in the distortion field of I'm not good enough is pressure, is a feeling of confinement, a feeling of pressure, and the ability, and because it feels so scary, because you can experience the expectation, the fear comes up even stronger. And now what happens is that you began it in the family of origin, but now it becomes prevalent in that instead of being back here with yourself, all of your attention particles are magnetized into the external, looking like a schoolroom with a teacher who thinks you didn't do it right, and all of these other friends are getting it and you're not. And at home, all of your attention particles are out there. And what they're doing is that they're trying to calibrate, what do I need to do to be okay? I know I'm not good enough. See, that was the fix.
Mm-hmm.
The fix was in with that earliest energetic conclusion. And so now it's like all we can do is to become hyper vigilant to the out there, to try to measure up or try to avoid the confrontation or try to sneak around or whatever all of us are born with a very specific human design and astrology, a way, I call it the owner's manual. We have this body mind unit. It has very specific talents and gifts and limitations. But we start to use all of our natural inclination to deal with what we believe is against us, which looks like the entire world, basically, because it's happening in the family and it's happening at school and it's happening with our friends. So as all of this moves along, as it unfolds with our experience of ourselves as being less than, because we're like on the edge. How am I going to, I don't know what's going on out there. What am I going to do? I don't know how to handle it. I can't make sense of it. And from that place, what we're doing is that we are creating a distinction between out there and ourselves. And then we're trying to figure out how to navigate that. And so the me that is by now in the story that I'm spelling emerged is one that's caught in adaptive behaviors. According to the incarnating the personality, an outgoing personality might be distracting daddy who's an alcoholic by sitting on his lap and thinking he's cute and making jokes, patting him on the head. We've seen children do that. We may have been one who did that. We've seen little boys and girls that are trying to give mom all the attention she needs because we know instinctively that it's not going on between our parents. So we're coming into this way. And now what happens with all of these adaptive behaviors is that authenticity is gone. Our ability to represent ourselves as just needing something or wanting something or offering something is absolutely shut down, because all we can do is determine how to be based on what we see in that external reality. So who we are, what we could express, what we could offer is never, ever expressed. And often when we try to express it, we get shut down. We get this. Is all this making sense to everybody?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I know all this is repeating stuff that all of you know, but I want it to be so available to us to understand what we're trying to do here. So from this place now realize that this distortion field doesn't go away because we find effective ways to interact with the apparent external circumstances. The distortion field is alive and well. And so everything that comes into our attention, everything that comes into our experience is already distorted by our self-concept, I'm not good enough. So everything that we are seeing out there is a challenge to us to either overcome it or to comply or to some way deal with it so that we don't have to suffer our own conclusion, I'm not good enough. A lot of our efforts, a lot of our ways of being in the world are on behalf of us not experiencing what we concluded so long ago. The difficulty in the distortion field, well, not the difficulty, but part of the dilemma is that it's based in a polarity. And so there is the possibility of getting the good end of the stick, right? You really do get to be the cheerleader and the quarterback's girlfriend. You really do get to be the homecoming queen. A lot of that happens, but underneath that is the fear that it's not going to last, or they don't know who I really am. So it's a kind of an imposter thing that we deal with, a sense of being, of misrepresenting ourselves, and of people, if they only knew who I really was. Yeah. And so as this goes on through life, we are now, another part of this is that the frequency of being against ourselves is the frequency of fear. And that frequency of fear that's always being emitted by this body-mind unit hits the body first. So the body takes the hit of your disclaiming yourself, of your self judgment. Everything that you're thinking, feeling about yourself against yourself, the body is taking the hit of that because it is a frequency. There is a frequency there. And so we're caught in this dilemma of believing that we need to be a certain way to be okay, to even start to get what we want. And the other part of it, which is we are literally against ourselves with the belief, I'm not good enough. We are literally against ourselves when we are not expressing authentically. Both of those things are kept from us by our early conclusion and by now the distortion field in which we live. So as this goes along, what happens, and what's happened for most of us on the call or here in the room, is that we hear ourselves asking the kind of ancient question, is this all there is? Is what's going on here? This doesn't make sense. All of a sudden, it comes to our attention that our lives have gone along to whatever place they have, and we've never been present for ourselves. And it may come to our attention through a health crisis, or it may come to our attention through a dynamic in relationship. It may come to our attention because all of a sudden we are willing to let ourselves know consciously that we're not happy, that we're not doing this. Is sometimes the inner conversation goes something like, this is my life and I'm not doing anything in it that I want for myself. Take a look, right? Yeah. This is your life for you. That all got left behind with the earliest installation of the frequency of fear that turned us toward the external. So now now we're living in a 3D reality. And just for another complication in this whole story, that 3D reality was created by your frequency in the past. And so as it shows up as your life, it's like you're trying to work to solve it there, right? In this present moment, when its creation was in the past, and the far past, when you concluded, I'm not good enough, but all the different iterations of that over all the decades of your life, however many they've been. So now we're working on a problem that there is no solution for. The reason the adage, there's no solution for the problem at the level of the problem. What it's pointing to is what I'm pointing out. The problem was like into the quantum field, the frequency of fear has been coming in ever since that earliest experience and that conclusion about oneself. And it's been embedded in the reality, and it shows up, and then the other end of the stick will show up. So it's confounding to the mind. The mind has no answers. The heart has no questions. And in this understanding of what's been going on and what our way into the opening and our way out of it is exactly that. Come home to the heart, come home to true nature, come home to the one I am. And so it is if this were Match.com, you would be responding to an ad by one that loves, knows, and is you. You know, you're coming home to that true nature, to that awake awareness, to that fullness. And you, in order to do that, you have to reclaim your attention particles from out there, looking like it's somebody else's fault, or it's somebody else I need, right? Or it's something I need to get or avoid. So you come home, it's like I say, energetically, it's like reclaiming your attention out there, bringing it back to oneself. And in this place of the awake awareness that is who you are, instead of what's showing up there as difficulties and problems and people who don't understand, people who don't get you, people who are triggering you all the time because they're unkind or whatever. All of that dissolves because all that you've been waiting for is you. It's never been that guy or that gal. It's never been about anything out here, that car, that profession, that influence, that anything. It's like back here with yourself, the fullness of that is something many in this room through your meditation practice have experienced. But now what the invitation is to live from that place, to live from that place of that awake awareness, and realizing that if anything shows up there, that in the moment might prick you, trigger you, or whatever, that it will pass. If you don't need to be caught by it, right? The opportunity. Now, this is not to imply that you shouldn't deal with it, like in the sense of using it to do the 6 steps, to see something showing up that feels like it's against you, that feels like it's an imposition or that it's a threat or anything else. That's a trigger. And remember that that is showing up as an aspect of the distortion field that got installed. It's an amazing reality when we really get the way it works. It sounds a little simplistic, but in the practice of it is only in this moment, in this clarity, on my own side, noticing that what can keep me from my own side is my own mind. And the last time we gathered, we talked about the internalized abuser. The mind takes on the role of keeping you in your place so that you will be treated better or you won't be treated badly. But that was just another installation of the experience or the feeling of your early conclusion, I'm not good enough. So there are pieces here to be attentive to. Notice when the inner critic is putting you down, is keeping you from being who you want to be. Notice when things are showing up that seem that they're against you. So it's the practice is, the meditation is always the practice, because in meditation, when we do fall into that awake awareness that is our true nature, then we are filled, we are lifted, we are informed of what's real and what makes a difference. This is what makes a difference. You know, if we look at history and all of the forays into trying to change things to make them better, or to conquer something so that it could be subdued and then be generative on behalf of what our ideas were, our country was it. All of those things have been in the projected distortion field of fear. So that's been the movie that's been going on. It's compelling because we have participated in that. And it's not to discount it or to be dismissive of it, but it is to come back ongoingly, come back to ourselves where we begin to redream this reality. And we redream it from the truth, from the love that is our true nature. Because we've been living in a distortion field created by an aberration in consciousness. And, in the Course in Miracles, it says there was a tiny mad idea of not God. And we're living in the dream of that. But what God is the fullness that we access and we connect to through our true nature. We are all exactly the same there. We are all of that. I am of that. You are of that. And so we have the opportunity to notice when anything is off, it doesn't feel good, it hurt my feelings, to do the work on discreating the source of that suffering, that feeling of being not good enough or neglected or whatever. Use anything that happens that triggers you as the opportunity to see what you're believing about yourself that's creating in your reality. Because whatever you believe about yourself is going to create in your reality. And in the midst of everybody else's reality, for the ego, fear-based identities, there's not very much shared reality. I mean, it's similar, for sure, there's similarities, but typically you're going to have your own experience of being discredited or your own experience of being neglected. And everybody thinks it happens to them. Well, it's just what's happening because of the collective idea or belief that we are not who we truly are. It's a mistaken identity. And each one of us can clear up our part in it. And when we do, we begin to create a new reality. We're here to redream this world by raising our frequency out of fear and into the fullness of this, just this, right here, right now. Feel what it feels like. Everything's here now. And what it is, it's the higher octave of love. And we are that. The floor is open for questions. I think that was kind of a rant instead of a drama talk, but hey.
So if you're in the room, you can raise your hand or speak out. If you're on Zoom, you can go ahead and raise your hand or just unmute yourself. Yeah, Thad.
Hi, honey.
Need to mute and between self.
Hang
I
on.
just want to say good night. I have to run.
Unmute. You need to unmute yourself, Thad.
Oh, sorry. I just meant to
I
say
can't
goodbye.
hear you.
Oh,
Can't hear you.
um, that's okay.
I can hear him. Maybe it's your volume on your computer.
You guys can hear him?
No.
We can.
Yes,
Everybody on Zoom can hear him.
We can online, so you may just have the volume on your computer down.
Got him.
Where are you?
He's, oh, sorry, Phil, hang on 1 second. Where are you?
Bye.
Where?
You're just looking at yourself.
Okay.
Give me a
I
second.
was looking at myself. That's what's going on all the time, by the way, guys. Ain't nobody here but you.
Okay. Okay. Where are you, Thad?
Is he over there?
No, that's
he's
not.
not there.
He disappeared. So while we're waiting for him to come back, if anybody else wants to.
He said he had to go and he was just waving goodbye.
Thanks, Marcy.
Yeah.
I have a question. I feel like some moments I can hold that I don't for hold is not the right word, but I can be in that frequency what I feel one if ever thing, and I can feel the God is who we are expressing through ourselves, and life seems so amazing, beautiful, and nothing to do. But I lose that, and sometimes I see the opposite of the stick. So any suggestion how to navigate during this process that you can have glimpses of that oneness, of that divinity on us, and after go direct to hell with no time to accommodate myself. So is that I got a little excited because I think Eckhart Tolle said that you build up. So it's 3 seconds there, 30 seconds here, 3 minutes there, and one day you can just stay. But I'm not there yet. So far, I just have, oh, feels good. And suddenly, oh, doesn't feel good at all. So if you have anything that you can share about these moments that comes and goes like this.
Yeah. Well, somebody in here probably knows more about Dzogchen than I do, but I think the practice of short moments comes from Dzogchen. Is that right, Deborah?
Yes.
Yeah. And so there's been a practice because many people who are on the path to wake up out of fear have the same kind of back and forth dynamic that you described. And you may be able to talk about this, Deborah, better than I, what they call short moments, noticing you have it, you have it in that space. And it's like to grow that and to use that to be, value that more than the other thing when you seem to be caught in fear or reaction. Could you say more about the short moments,
But
Deborah?
just that in that tradition, there's this mass of practices called skillful means that you can apply when you forget or when you're in some phase of suffering. And so the path of practice is one where you actually, in this case, you would do 6 steps. That would be the case that you're teaching. If a trigger comes, you practice. And then that Vajrayana, if a trigger comes, you do like one of these many things, including relax and let it be. And don't try too hard and don't grasp at it and all of that. That's all part of that practice. Relax again, and no effort. And then just what's called re-recognize. But if you don't re-recognize, you apply a skillful mean.
Right, so what you're pointing to, thanks, Debbie. What you're pointing to is that whenever you are caught in what doesn't feel good, that's a trigger. And you can use the 6 steps. So we're so accustomed to being triggered that sometimes it doesn't impact us, or we can't, we don't recognize it as being a trigger, right? It's just like life as usual. Like I'm just pissed off the way I was yesterday. So that's it. But if you recognize it as being a trigger, it's like the things that we just think are ordinary, if they don't feel good, those will take you into a self-concept that can be forgiven, that can be at least dissolved to a certain degree. So using that doldrum or that down cycle or that irritation or whatever comes up that doesn't feel like the presence of true nature, which feels, we all know what it feels like. It feels like the way it is for us in meditation, when it is, and it's not always that way, but when it is the feeling of the fullness, of the being lifted up, of the presence. There's so many, basically language is what has created this fear-based 3D reality. So it's a slippery slope as we use language to undo the impediment to our true nature. But it's fodder for the 6 steps. Thanks, Deborah. That's really true. I sometimes forget that because it's and for many of you in here who have practiced that for a while, it may take you right into the early memory. It may take you right into the forgiveness, seeing it. I see this is the early moment in which I concluded I don't matter. And in seeing that, I can forgive myself. Something real happens, but our conclusion is the problem, not what happens. In Gabor Mate's book, The Myth of Normal, I think he points to, it's not what happens to us, it's what we do with it inwardly that creates the difficulty.
The conclusion that you get about ourselves.
Exactly. He's not quite there yet, but close. Yeah.
A second, Geo was first, and then
Just one to add, I don't know if it helped, but when I was taught my meditation practice, he said when thoughts came like that, to just say, don't give it any weight. And somehow that phrase, even though it's the same as letting go or something, but not giving it any weight was somehow physically clear to me. So when I'm meditating and then my mind goes crazy, I just say, don't give it. Somehow or other that helped.
Yeah, it's a good pointer.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Not to give it any weight points to no validity, no engagement, nothing. It's like it has no presence. That's beautiful, Carolyn. Thank you.
When Polly, thank you. When I think about the frequency of fear, I think that I imagine my frequency of fear is like this cell tower that's radiating fear all the time. That's kind of the image I have from your explanation. And yet, when I think back, I mean, certainly in my childhood, I had, 1,000 adaptive behaviors. But I also had moments of fun and bliss and happiness and engagement. And I noticed when I was thinking about that, I was thinking, well, when did that actually happen? It happened a lot around play, free play. And it also happened in church. Like I was really interested in church and I went to church a lot, being a Catholic. And so it seemed to me that there were times, and this is really the question, when the frequency of fear actually shuts off. And I'm actually just, even as a child, playing baseball, and I'm not tripping on, well, I used to trip on not being a Detroit Tiger, but that's a whole trauma, which we don't have time for. But so it seems to me that in the way I'm imagining that my cell tower as a child, sometimes it was off.
Right, that's right.
But you've never said that.
I didn't.
It's
say
always
that.
like boom, 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 all the time. Come on.
Bad girl. Yeah. Yeah,
No, bad teacher, that's even worse.
that's even worse, like, don't do that.
You
The whole thing with the flow state, which is where children go to often, right? What we call the flow state that we often attain to during a mindless, fun, downhill skiing or surfing or snorkeling or whatever, we are then relieved of it. You see, that this reality is polarized. Never, you got the good end of the stick, right? But you're never free of the other end until you go meta to the stick, which is what waking up is about. Makes sense? Yeah. It's like if you've got a stick and one end is freedom and fun and ease, and the other end is confinement and suffering and pain. Meta to that is freedom, and it's not based in. I don't believe that the flow state is based in the comparative with the confined state. I think it is meta, actually.
Right.
My sense of it is that it is. But that's what our job is. You see, embedded in language, embedded in everything that we are conditioned with in this reality is the polarity. And I think of, this is really going to date me, but Peggy, well, you know how old I am anyway. Peggy Lee's song, "Is That All There Is?" Right. And that's the condition that a lot of people get to as they fulfill what they thought was going to be what would fulfill them, as they get what they thought was going to be the answer to an experience of suffering. So we're moving into our natural condition without the mind, without the fear, is what we call the flow state. And what that is, another way to describe what that is no self. It's just not a person, but it's the full expression. All of you all know I'm this quirky little old lady who's like, you have full expression and the fun of a body-mind unit, but you are not caught in the limitation of your mind in fear. Our minds in fear create the contraction, they create the constriction, and they create the suffering. Those minds do.
Interrupt.
Please.
But Linda, see, I think that's why your question is so great, because if you do sports or hiking or swimming, I think you're in that flow state. And you're not going, hey, bad me, bad stroke. It's just like, you're happy.
And you do a lot of things like that, don't you?
Yeah, but I'm
Pickleball.
Pickleball, yes. I'm experiencing that now, but for many years, don't matter what I did, I was acting from that fear-based platform. So even when I'm laughing with my friends or in nature, I should never say that. Oh, I can't believe that. And that dialogue is going inside, and that's 100% fear-based and judgmental. So don't matter what I was doing, I was confronting that voice inside of me all the time. That is analyzing and judging and evaluating and comparing. And it was, I mean, I have no place to go because that voice was with me all time.
Hmm.
So
We
I,
thought you were that voice.
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, on Wednesday, whenever that was last, we were talking about the internalized abuser. That's one of the things that happens early on, is that we internalize the abuser, the judge, the critic, so that it keeps us being good. But that it turns out that it just overrides us, imposes upon us a frequency of fear.
Yeah.
But that voice is to be attended to notice that it's going on and to say to it, no, thank you.
Now I'm aware about that much more. And when the voice come, I can say, let's say, I don't give that any weight, or like, I just keep an open my heart, breathe in, let go, surrender, all the things, but don't entertain any thoughts that I'm in trouble, as you said. But I feel like I need to be quote unquote vigilant
Exactly.
the whole time,
True.
because the voice can take over the whole
Mhm.
scene like this, and suddenly there I am, or sad or depressed or guilty or
Vigilante.
vigilant.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a kind of alertness, because it's so, it and we are accustomed to it running the show, for sure. And because it had a kind of purposeful onset, it was purposeful in its trying to keep us from doing the wrong thing, or it's trying to keep us being a good girl, or noticing that things were not going right, or it had a purpose, and so it did get installed. But it is the, we were talking about that at the last group, I think.
That's what Robert said, that I need to listen for what you talked last week, and that's probably very, very helpful to.
But this is it, you're getting the whole thing right here, this is it.
Yeah, I'm here, I'm seeing the voice.
Yeah.
I hear that, and they're like, you're not take over the show anymore.
Right.
But sometimes it's so like, oh, yeah, but thank
Yeah,
you.
so there's a fine line there between resisting it, which will give it a pushback ability, and just letting it be. It's like, it's like having something on and Alexa's not listening to you to turn it off, right? Alexa, you're still playing that goddamn same old song. Turn it off. So it's like just that alertness, and so no resistance is required. It's just see it. It simply does not apply. It was created out of a different dynamic, but it's been running the show.
Carolyn, did you have something else? No, okay, that was just a.
One thing that I noticed also being out of the island for 5 or 6 weeks, how the society is used to operate from the fear-based platform. It's like we talk to people and they just talk in some way how we are going to hell together. Like it's about the pesticide, it's about the politics, it's about the worm planet warming, it's about that. And I'm like, oh gosh, there's no way that you can win here. So it's very, because you have our inner voice and you have the collective voice that's talking all the bad things that are doing to the planet and all this and all that, and there's no winner there, and it's 100% fear-based, because they have no control on that at all.
Right, it's gotten extreme because my sense of the collective shift that's possible, and I do believe it will unfold, is the polarities that have gotten so extreme that the collapse is kind of inevitable. In the past, there's been collective conditioning, and a certain level of people in different stratas of culture or society behaved in a certain way because of the overlay of conditioning. But now all of that's coming up, because just like our individual realization that this is my life for me, and the truth of who I am is awake awareness. Just as that's becoming available for us individually, collectively, the polarities we see, what we see are the polarities collapsing, even if it's gender polarity, right? what was the joke about the the father who had to have a discussion with his teenage son about the birds and the bees? He says, I don't have any problem with talking to you about the birds and the bees, but about the bees and the bees and the birds and the birds, I'm not sure. So the polarities are collapsing, and that leaves us in this untenable kind, we're not anchored anymore. We're not in collective conditioning. So we're coming out of conditioning individually and collectively, and coming out of conditioning individually can feel very uncertain. Right? Very uncertain. And that's when we go into that inner space of our own true nature, which is awareness, and realize that's what's happening. It seems that that's what's happening, but who I am is the awareness of it. And as the awareness of it, I have this kind of benign detachment, right? I'm not being pulled into the fear, into the conflagration, into that difficulty. But it's much more prevalent on the mainland, isn't it? I know. Yeah. Yeah, when people ask me about how irresponsible are you that you don't have an opinion, I say, I don't care about my own opinions. I certainly don't give a shit about yours.
It's just mental content that
Exactly, right.
have no weight at all. It's just,
No, and it's made up out of a very specific kind of experience and a conclusion of a particular kind of mind. And typically the fear is an aspect of both of those things.
So
Most
the
fun you can
judge,
have.
excuse
Yeah.
me,
Yes,
so
we
the
are.
judge is really the fear.
That's
I
right.
separate it by saying it's the judge, but it's all the fear.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was created by the fear.
Yeah.
yeah. That's why I think that you, Pali, and Yoda, you're our best gurus. Look at you. It's not fear to be judged at all. It's just oh my God. That's a compliment. That's I'm hard him to be my guru.
He's our model.
It's our model to be in the present moment with no fear, no judgment.
Truly.
Nightmare. A dream.
We have time for one more question, just a short question, if anybody has, or we can pause here.
I had one more yesterday. Robert suggested me to call you, Polly, but I did not. What it mean when you're triggered and you do the 6 steps and you still in fear per se, or still like yesterday I had one and I was like, so Robert helped me to do the 6 steps. We did the 6 steps and he asked me, do you feel better? And I'm like, not really. So we say, call Polly. What you do, it doesn't work. So I don't know, because it was something that I feel that I was doing something wrong, inappropriate or not good enough.
Right.
And so he asked me when it was the first time that you have something like this. I felt like I did something wrong. And I went back in my childhood and like, oh my God, everything that happened there, I felt like I was doing wrong. I have no chance to get right there. No winners there. So when he asked me to find one, like my brain picked up all my childhood together, like it's thousands here. How you want to pick one? I could not go back to the first one. But I have all those flashes, of feeling wrong at home, feeling wrong at school, feeling wrong at, And so we did the 6 steps. And after that, I was still like sad and want to cry and feeling like I wasn't, that was wrong. That's no way that I could get things right. So do you have anything to say? It's like because I didn't find the first one that I could not release that? Or
no, I think that what you did see and were aware of it, that we in your work on it, which is great. The work you're doing is really impressive. But it's like the conclusion is that I'm wrong, right? All of the iterations that you have of the experiences that led you to that conclusion, that the conclusion is typically always the same for you, is that I'm wrong. And now I would like to ask you a question and just pre-associate. What's true about somebody who's wrong?
Somebody doesn't deserve love, I'm not worthy.
Not worthy, right? Yeah. So if we look at underneath the conclusion that's obvious, and there may be others underneath there to see, and the question is, if I'm not good enough, what's true about somebody who's not good enough? They are worthless, or they don't matter, or something is under there. And so that's what we're looking at for you, because the I'm wrong is like this all across your experience in every arena of your life. So it doesn't have any bite, but what you believe about yourself that's under that is the thing that is operative. And that's the projection of that creates the distortion field. There's something underneath that.
Yeah, and I did again afterwards yesterday, and I got I don't deserve love, but I get something even worse than that. Not worse, but it's like it was something like I can win here. I'm a loser.
Yeah, because
I'll
there's
be in
something
pain the
under,
whole time.
what's true about a person who doesn't deserve love? They must be what?
Worthless. Yeah.
That's in the direction of
Yeah,
that, because
and
that one,
Hopeless and helpless.
hopeless,
Also.
hopeless, right?
Yeah.
They have nothing in up for them. They have not. They are nothing basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
So
just-
that's where you want to practice forgiveness. You want the bright light of awareness to shine on that conclusion, unavoidable conclusion of that little girl. Because that's what's under there that's operative. What comes out of that in the distortion field is the experience of always being wrong, right? Not doing it right, having people judge you, and then you internalize the judge. So now it's self-judgment. So it's like getting down into the core of that and forgiving that, because it's like it's what's causing the matter. And that's the point of the 6 steps. We come through being triggered, we'll come to a conclusion like I'm wrong, or I never get it right, something like that. But underneath there's an identity conclusion about myself. Like I'm a piece of shit, or I don't matter, like that. And that's where we bring the light of forgiveness in, to see that that is a creation. It's just like sometimes, and I'm working at this level with identities and self-concepts, it's like Russian dolls, you know, those nested Russian dolls. It's like that one, and we get down to that real thing there. You know? And to have the bright light of awareness, and now that realization that I am what's shining on that is an object. I'm a piece of shit is an object. It's a conclusion. But what knows that, what is aware of that, is the one I am. And that is the awake awareness of my true nature. I am that. So we have the experience of the distinction between what I have and who I am. And that's forgiveness. That bright light of awareness is the forgiveness. You do such good work, sweetheart.
Thank you.
Thank you, Polly. So we're going to shift now into meditation.